I, 44 female, have 2 children, twin boys, with my ex-husband, 46. He cheated on me with his affair partner, and they had 2 children, a female kindergartner and a male 1 year older. He ended up marrying her. Despite all this, my ex and I decided to be civil to one another for the kids' sake. We agreed that I had the kids during the weekdays and he had them on the weekends. It worked reasonably well. He would often bring his other children when picking up our sons. They were good kids. His wife hardly spoke to me, but she was civil and good to my children, which was good enough for me. Last year, his wife died suddenly. My ex went into depression. My sons were worried about their siblings, so I spoke to my ex, and he said that they were fine. My son asked if they could have their siblings stay over, and after asking my ex, he was okay with it. This started happening often, and it did give my ex time to get help with his depression. When I felt he was doing better, I started encouraging him to be with his children more, as I noticed his children were getting attached to me, which he did. But his children kept asking for their siblings and wanting to return to my house. My ex suggested we take them out on weekends together, which I shouldn't have agreed to, now that I think about it. Now I've got a job offer with better pay, and I decided to take it. But it would mean I'd have to move to the other side of the country. I told my sons, and they said they would miss their siblings and dad, but were excited about the move and change. They told my ex, and he got very upset with me. He rang me and said I can't take his sons away. I said we could come visit when I visited my parents, but he wasn't listening and said his kids were going to be upset. I said I'm sorry about that, but he must deal with it. He called me cruel and heartless and then hung up on me. That same day, his parents called me and said I was selfish to take away the boys and that ex's other kids needed a mother figure in their lives. I told them I wasn't their mother, and they said that they'd been watching me with them and said I was doing everything a mother does for her children. They then threatened to take me to court for the boys if I went. Since then, I've had his family text and ring me saying I was selfish and cruel and that I needed to step up. I feel so guilty. Am I the idiot for refusing to help my ex-husband raise his kids after his wife died? I'm not sure, but can you legally take your kids across the country and away from their father? Is your parenting agreement for your 2 kids part of the divorce settlement? OP, you need a lawyer well-versed in family law to determine the rules for moving so far away. Make sure you do everything in line with the law. That said, you're not responsible for your ex's other kids. This is for him to sort out, not the idiot, as long as you do everything by the book. I am legally able to move without my ex's permission because I have full custody. We agreed to him seeing them on the weekends outside of court, so legally, I can move without his consent. His parents threatened to take me to court to try and get back custody. Oh Lord, I suspect your ex uses you as a backup wife and mom to his kids, and that's something he and his family must figure out, not you. You need to not have any contact with his family at this point. His parents have threatened to take you to court. Their contact with you should now only be through attorneys. Your ex is responsible for his other children. Asking you to be anything to them is a slap in the face. Agreed. His kids from the affair are not your responsibility. And where is this so-called family of his when he was depressed? His relatives need to step up instead of bothering you. The audacity of expecting you to parent the kids from his affair because it's convenient for them is gross. He's your ex for a reason. Your life isn't on hold for him. His parents don't run your life. Those other 2 kids of his are not your problem either. It's nice of you to do what you've done already. His parents can get more involved if they're so worried about it and help him with his mental health for the sake of the 2 kids he has. Hoping the new job and new start bring you satisfaction and joy. I was pre-screening students for a highly sought-after internship. It only has 5 openings a semester. The interview process is an essay. This pre-screening interview over Zoom and 2 to 3 interviews afterward. This happens normally in a student's college junior year, so most candidates are at least in their early 20s. I was interviewing a young man, Dave, 21, from the online campus. Good grades, great essays, and a portfolio. I get an email that there's a third party in Zoom from Gmail. It's not uncommon to have a professor join us to sing the student's praises, and I sent the link. The time comes, and it's the student and his mom. I ask the student questions, and like clockwork, the mom interrupts him and talks over us both. Then for the achievement the student is most proud of, the mom goes into an almost 30-minute tirade about his 5th grade science fair. The allotted time for the interview is 30 minutes, and it was set in a calendar invite. With the mom talking, this pre-screen is almost an hour. The student himself has said a dozen words in that hour. I went to finish up, and I said next time, maybe let Dave speak for himself, because it's not a good look to have a mom answering all the questions at his age and this far into his degree program. The mom goes off and starts cussing at me, so I close the window to Zoom. Days later, my supervisor asked me about it because I red flagged the student in our system to not recommend him for any internship, and the mom has been emailing and calling the school about me to complain. My supervisor acted like I could have handled that better by being more accommodating to the student and his mom. Am I the idiot for telling a mom she shouldn't be in her son's interview? Not the idiot. The only thing I think you did wrong here was let that go for as long as you did. You're right to tell her, but should have done so right at the beginning, not at a half hour late. My partner actually has a similar role, albeit for hiring people. Here was his advice. Ma'am, it was nice to meet you, and we're always happy when a student has a supportive family. But this interview is somewhat confidential and has to be conducted one-on-one. So I'm going to have to ask you to log out and simply don't proceed until the helicopter flies away. Very strange for the supervisor to want to accommodate this, by the way. Mom is already harassing the staff at her place her son doesn't even work at yet. Can you imagine the tirade if he had a bad day at work or something? It's a big issue these days. It's called snowplow parents, who don't want to see their kids struggle, so they just handle all the problems for them and leave them ill-prepared for the real world. Mom needs to know she's sabotaging her child. I wouldn't be surprised if she knew. I think you and the mom are idiots, to be honest. The minute you saw his mom in the interview and talking over you, you should have stopped and told them that either she left or the interview won't continue. Flagging him was also a bit extreme. I'd reach out to him personally to see if he needs help, and it should be school policy that interviews do not include parents. So I, a 30-year-old male, come from a well-off family, but my dad always taught me to work hard and have class. When I was 14, I started working at my dad's company part-time to earn my allowance, and when I turned 16, I became a full-time employee. My dad decided to retire when I was 29 and handed the business to me. Back in my second year of uni, I met Kim, a 20 male at the time, 29 now. We were in the same course and ended up in the same group for a group project near the beginning of the year. We had a similar sense of humor and clicked as friends quickly. One day he mentioned he loves to cook, and I told him we should cook together because I love to cook too. We went to his place that weekend, brought some ingredients and cooked together. This then became us going shopping for ingredients after classes on Fridays. I'd stay at his place the night, and then we'd cook on the weekend, and this became our weekly routine. Back then, I just told others that we were just friends, but in hindsight, that's when I started to fall for him. I finally asked him out a few months later, and he said yes. We lived in the same house with 2 other friends in our 3rd year, and I asked him to move in with me after we graduated. From the beginning, I told Kim that I would not care if he didn't work, but he insisted he wanted to contribute financially. But after about a year, I had to make him stop due to the differences in our incomes. He was working himself half to death and was getting ill trying to contribute enough. I sat him down and I told him that whatever money he made didn't matter, and that if he wanted to work, I wanted him to be happy. He cut back his hours, then moved to part-time, then decided to quit and work on his projects. but he insisted I let him take on some of the housework. Now on to the issue. My sister, 32, and her partner, 31 male, both work, and he also makes significantly less than her. And in private to me, she's made it known that she resents being the breadwinner. She sees all her male colleagues spoil and treat their wives and wishes her partner would do the same. He does, but not to the same level, due to the fact that he makes half as much as they do. Recently, I was talking to her about what I would get Kim for his birthday next month. She kept telling me my ideas were too much and that I should get something cheaper since he doesn't contribute. I got a bit annoyed because I told her about Kim's insecurities and not making or being enough. I told her he contributes more than enough. She then called him a glorified gold digger, and I yelled at her, telling her to shut up and not talk about Kim that way. After calming down, I do feel bad. I know how she feels about her own financial position, but I don't think it's fair that she takes it out on Kim or me, even if Kim wasn't physically there. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your sister's projecting her frustrations and insecurities onto you and Kim. If your relationship with Kim works for you and he, sis needs to butt out. She clearly wants something else, like big expensive gifts. She should be happy her husband is getting her gifts or flowers, because not all husbands do that. He does what he can afford to. She doesn't get the Hope Diamond if he can't afford it. But she's the breadwinner in her relationship. I think she wanted to be the gold digger, but somehow ended up in a relationship where her man makes half as much as she does. She's absolutely jealous that OP's partner gets to live out his best life, while OP spoils him when he can. OP, your sister cares too much about money status and other people's perceptions. That's her problem. She's the idiot in this. If you're happy, she should be happy for you. Her issues and insecurity shouldn't be put on your relationship. I don't know if food insecurity is the correct term, but it's the term he uses to describe what this is. Honestly, I've been with him for 3 years, and this is the first I've heard of it. So I came into this relationship with 2 kids, a younger tween daughter and an older tween son. I didn't introduce my boyfriend and the kids until maybe 8 months ago. And lately, Ben, boyfriend, has been coming and staying here with us more often than not. Sometimes he'll spend days at a time here and only go home maybe once a week. Well, lately, I've noticed little signs of weird food quirks of his that I'm not okay with. He eats enough for 5 people's days worth of food. Or instead of letting my kids dish out their food as I've always done, he's been doing it and giving them maybe 3/4 of what they would usually eat, and then loading his plate up to the fullest that it could get. I pay for all the food, just so it's clear. One time last week, my daughter asked for some more food, and he spoke up and said, there isn't enough for everyone to have seconds. I stepped in and said that she could have more, and that there was plenty for the kids to have seconds. I didn't tell him this, but like I was so grossed out by it, because he literally had enough on his plate to feed 3 people, and if he had just taken a normal helping like everyone else, then there would have been plenty left over. But anyway, I spoke to him about it that night and told him that the kids come first. They eat until they're full, and that's how it goes in my house. He kind of put his hands up and said, sorry, won't happen again, and said he just figured it wasn't fair to everyone else who wanted seconds because there wasn't enough for everyone. I'm assuming he meant himself. But anyway, he apologized, so I let it go. But then yesterday evening, he went grocery shopping for me because both my kids had events, and I had a bunch of other stuff I had to do, and I didn't have time to grocery shop as well. So he told me he would go for me. I sent him with my money, more than enough, and a very specific list. Well, I had plain bagels and original cream cheese on the list. He returns with 3 different types of bagels and 3 different types of cream cheese. But I didn't complain. It's whatever. But then this morning, my kids were making themselves bagels, and Ben started scolding them for not using the correct cream cheese to go with the bagel. And he wasn't even really nice about it either. I mean, he wasn't raising his voice, but it was the look on his face. And I was immediately turned off. It was my money that bought that food. But since he went and got it, apparently he feels like it's his too, and can dictate how my children eat it. Anyway, he left for work, and I told him that this wasn't going to work out because I couldn't handle his hang-ups with food. Well, he says, "I'm really sorry. I have food insecurities. I know we can make this work. I'll try harder to keep my mouth shut." But I couldn't get my daughter's face out of my head when he was scolding her, and I ultimately decided I could never change that again and told him as much. He says he can't believe I'm throwing him away instead of trying to work on this. Am I the idiot for breaking up with my boyfriend because of his food insecurities? Not the idiot. I'm not sure if food insecurity is the correct term. The expression you're after is greedy and controlling. Get him out and keep him out before he starts telling your preteen daughter she's too fat and needs to restrict her calories. Your kids do not need this eating disorder generator in their lives. This is spot on. Greedy and super controlling. He was doing his best to give your children disordered eating. Good riddance. Seriously, I'm tearing up just thinking about the awfulness she's almost certainly preventing her young kids from internalizing. Good job, OP. Kudos for putting your kids first. It starts like this, and then he'll be jealous of the time OP spends with the kids, of the money and gifts they get. And if he sees them as rivals now, there's no need to wait for the crap show in their teens. He's trying to take the first place through food, and if this gets normalized, rest will follow. LOL, he's like this when it's your money. Imagine what it would be if it were his. He's a prime example of cuckoo's nest syndrome. He has a problem, and he's making it your problem and your kid's problem. Get rid of him. Protect your kids. I have a stepdaughter, teen, with my new husband, and a daughter, tween, with my ex, who left me. My daughter adores her stepsister, but she doesn't like her back, which we understand. We planned a family vacation last summer, but we ended up having to cancel it because my stepdaughter didn't want to go on a trip with her sister and me. I ended up doing a trip with my daughter, and my husband did one with his. This year, we decided to go on a family vacation too, but this time, my stepdaughter wanted a trip with both of us, but not her stepsister, because, according to her, she's an annoying little brat and will ruin the trip. My daughter started to cry, and my stepdaughter told my daughter, "Go ask your own dad. Oh, wait, he left you." I was shocked and told her that we would not be taking her on vacation without my daughter, but my husband wanted me to tell my daughter that life is unfair and leave her at her grandparents' house while we went on vacation with my stepdaughter. My husband says it'll cost extra money to get my daughter her own room and extra cost to take her on the trip, and he said he'd rather spend that money on making the trip more memorable for his daughter. I'm honestly appalled at how much my husband favors his daughter. That day, we had a massive argument, and she accused me of not letting a teenager have a nice vacation without an annoying child. Am I the idiot? Your response should have been, tell your brat of a teenager that life is unfair and she can stay with her grandparents so you can make memories with your daughter. The fact that you've let this behavior go on for so long, not just by your stepdaughter, but also by your husband, makes you the idiot. You need to start thinking about your kid and end this marriage. Exactly. How OP responds now is going to color how her daughter views her for the rest of their lives. At the minimum, OP needs to draw a very clear line in the sand with her husband and explain that what he said is entirely unacceptable. Really, OP needs to just end her marriage. Her daughter shouldn't be bullied or belittled in her own home. I include the stepdad in the statement. Nah, OP won't do anything. Having a man is more important to her than her daughter's mental health. She wants what she wants and believes her daughter will adjust to being treated like a second-class citizen in her own home, and OP is okay with that. There's no way OP's husband would take in her daughter. I'm sure she'd end up living with the grandparents. If the child's dad was in the picture, OP might ship her off to him. Poor daughter, she deserves a better family.